Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack
and Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff this week on the show. We're going to talk a little bit about some EA press conference news, including the announcement of Star Wars Squadron. We're going to remember the great Sir Ian Holm, who played Bilbo Baggins in Lord of the Rings, among other things. We're going to talk a little bit about movie theaters. We're going to give some very brief first impressions of The Last of Us Part 2.
Yep.
And then later this week, Sean, you are going to be hearing on Wednesday a bonus episode in this feed, which is going to be our big one-year anniversary episode for Weekly Suit Gundam, where we are going to be talking a little bit about all the Gundams we've reviewed in the last year and doing a bunch of rankings. It's the hardest set of rankings I've ever had to do, Sean.
Yes, we have made a dumb number of lists, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that'll not be in this episode, but that'll be out Wednesday in this feed or the Weekly Suit Gundam feed, wherever you want to listen to that. So that'll be today. Kind of a busy one. But Sean, how have you been?
As always, the impossible question to answer in these days. I've been fine, you know? Yeah, it's been fine. I got some emails that makes it more clear to me what, like, vaguely my job is going to look like in fall, and that was nice to be like, okay, so
I got those emails too this week.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm like 95% sure I'll still have a job because the budget cuts are not as severe as we feared.
That's good.
And I think that our school district is overly optimistic about what classes will look like, but it's nice that they're optimistic about it. I'm sure that we'll be in remote learning almost immediately as soon as the school opens again, but it's nice that they're like, hey, we'll try these things in the meantime. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, wear a mask. I just have school outside. Until you can't anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a practical, simple thing to do that would not be an utter fucking logistical nightmare.
Just, Sean, get everyone in a circle and read a book. I'm just imagining you, like, with a long beard on, like, a stump, just, like, reading from Huckleberry Finn.
Yes.
All right. Anyway, yeah, I got some of that, too, about, I go to the University of Iowa. They gave out their guidance for the fall. We're reopening except for classes bigger than 50. Those are all going to be remote. Seminar-style, smaller classes they're going to try to keep in person, which, for grad seminars that are like 8 people, you can do that.
Yes.
We'll see about bigger than that.
Yeah. They should just, since they're not going to have the huge, massive lecture classes, they should take the, 20-person classes and put them in the lecture halls.
Which they might be doing.
Yeah, that one is a hilarious mental image of having 20 people spread out all across this massive fucking lecture hall, but also would be a practical solution to the difficulties facing us.
Yes. So that'll be interesting. The thing, they're requiring masks, and they're giving masks to all faculty and students, so that's great. The thing
they're requiring masks, but I have not heard if they're giving us. I mean, I have masks, but there was this. I feel like you should just say we will be providing masks for everybody.
They need to give them to the kids. At least.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't expect them to get those. But yeah, the big thing that worries me is dorms. They're not shutting down the dorms. They're having everyone come back to the dorms. They're not making big changes. Like they said, we'll shut down some of the communal spaces in the dorms. I'm like, the communal spaces aren't the problem, guys.
Yeah.
The problem is the bathrooms that are all shared, and the tiny hallways, and the tiny living spaces where you're living with strangers.
Yes, it is literally physically impossible to 6-foot social distance yourself if you are in a dorm room with another person. There's not enough space, literally, at least in the dorm room I was in when I was in college.
Yeah.
You could not sit 6 feet away from someone else. Maybe if you moved all the furniture out and one person sat in one corner, one person sat in the opposite corner, you might be about 6 feet apart from each other.
If that. Yeah, I mean, I am very grateful I'm a grad student, and I can go. I have a home. I can go there at the end of the day. I have a roommate, but he's on a separate level than me. Very safe, and I have my own office, at the university that I can work in and stuff like that. But if I were an undergrad, God, if you're an undergrad, just take a gap year, guys. Don't start college this year. Mm-hmm. I know it's hard, but just don't get a job. That's dangerous too. Get a job remotely, make some money. Just, it would be a terrible fucking idea.
Just go, rob banks to make a living. Just go, let's destroy the foundations of our corrupt society. And, let's just take this opportunity while it's too dangerous to do other shit. Yeah. To just, Robin Hood this motherfucker.
Become an anarchist.
Exactly. Please.
Yeah. Anyway, we should probably have some kind of legal disclaimer here about our advice to young people. But we're not lawyers, so fuck it.
Yes, wink, wink. Definitely don't go dismantle the corrupt capitalist system that we live in. Wink, wink. That would be a bad idea, wink.
So in terms of stuff this week, I mean, I think for you and I, the major stuff is probably the same. We were both playing a bunch of Final Fantasy VII.
Yes, I have finished Final Fantasy VII.
I have not finished the remake yet. I'm kind of putting it on pause until I finish Last of Us, and then I'll come back to it. There's so much I like about that remake. Good God, in the last third, it gets into some filler that is so laughable, like Toei would reject it for an anime adaptation. Like, to the level of, like, Barrett falls in a hole, and then there's a dungeon to get Barrett out of the hole, and then move on with the story, and it's a filler arc within a filler arc at a point where you should probably be at the climax of this game. It's very, very weird. It's not terrible because the gameplay's fun and I like the characters, but it definitely slowed my progress. I've been reading a shit ton of One Piece. I'm in the 700s now.
My God.
I'm in the middle of the Dressrosa arc, which is the longest arc in One Piece. And it started and I'm like, how is this arc going to go over 100 chapters? That's a long-ass arc. Like, that's a lot of manga don't run 100 chapters.
Exactly, yeah.
And then I started seeing it, and there's one chapter where, to clarify everything, Oda goes between all the different parallel plot threads, and he goes scene 1, scene 2, and it's 6 separate scenes going on, and some of those in later chapters split into more, and I'm like, okay, that's how this runs 100 chapters, it is the most ludicrously ambitious thing I've ever read, and it's very good, and Don Quixote do Flamingo is a fucking bastard.
I'm sure he is. He sounds like it.
He's got a great name.
Yeah. Is he going and fighting windmills and shit?
Maybe.
Yeah, I hope so.
I do love that for, I think in the Western canon, like, we hear Don Quixote and you make the windmills reference.
Yes, and I think about G Gundam, and I think about the joke they made in G Gundam about the windmill Gundam and the Don Quixote thing.
But in Japan, I have no doubt in my mind, people see Don Quixote Don do Flamingo and go, Don Quixote. Because that's the first thing my brother said when I told him this is the name of the villain, because that's where he went to got his groceries, was Don Quixote.
Yeah, and to be clear, Don Quixote is a chain of stores in Japan. Yeah, that has a very good theme song. And
remember Junes in Persona 4?
Yeah.
Junes is Don Quixote.
Exactly, yes. And if you have played the Yakuza games, Don Quixote is just in those games.
Yes.
Sega paid the money or something.
Yeah,
it's like let's get this marketing deal done to get some good ass Don Quixote jingle.
I wonder if when that arc was ongoing, if they had like Don Quixote do Flamingo things. They had to have, right?
Yeah.
It's One Piece. It's advertised everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anywho, One Piece is very good. One day I want to talk about all the One Piece movies because I've watched most of them now, and they're surprisingly fantastic. Coming from my anime background being Dragon Ball movies, the One Piece movies are better.
Yeah, I feel like, because it's the same way with the Naruto movies. I feel like after that Dragon Ball movie thing, because I don't know if...
They're newer, too.
Yeah, I don't know if the One Piece movies are the same way, but the Naruto movies are basically all just original plots that introduce new characters that just get to be that plot for the movie.
Yep.
And so they are not, here's some character that is vaguely just the villain from the last arc in the series, just with a different design, and we just acceleratedly move through those plot points. They're just totally their own films. And cool.
Yeah, same thing with One Piece. One Piece doesn't do that. One Piece, the first 9 movies were done without Eiichiro Oda. And then after that, it's been very much like the recent Dragon Ball movies where the author oversees and even writes them. So they've gotten even better lately. I don't know if did Naruto ever get to that point?
Yes, yeah. Okay. It's the last 3 of them, I think. Because they had there was one where it was like a fun parallel universe one, and that was written by Kishimoto. And then the last Naruto the movie, which is set sort of after the main events of the Naruto manga, but before the epilogue stuff. That's very good. That's also Kishimoto. And then the Boruto movie, which is the last movie, that is also Kishimoto.
And that's the last thing Kishimoto did for it, right? Because then someone else took over Boruto. Yeah. Because Toei clearly made a change where up through 2010, they were still, all their big animes were doing one movie a year. Mm-hmm. And now they're like, we'll just make them as normal movies where you take 2 to 3 years.
Yes, yeah.
Which is good. So anyway, we'll talk about that at some point. But I think you and I, what's on our minds right now is The Last of Us Part 2.
Before that, one quick thing on my mind, and we'll talk about this at a future podcast. Hopefully, maybe someday you will see this, because I did finish Final Fantasy VII, and I was an idiot, and I decided, well, you know what happens after Final Fantasy VII? Square Enix made a movie called Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, this is technically the second time I've seen this movie, because I did see it when it originally came out on DVD with my friend, who's the friend I had when I was a kid that was way into Final Fantasy, and we played through 8 and 10 and stuff together. And I had very little real context for what Final Fantasy VII was when I first saw Advent Children, because I only knew Aerith dies. There's a dude named Sephiroth. He has a cool song, and that was in like the main dude is Cloud, and that's like the extent of it. And Cloud has a big dumb sword,
right?
And I have very little memory of any impressions of seeing the original cut of Advent Children in 2005 or 6ish. But they did a director's cut that is a 2-hour-long movie. They added 30 minutes of footage.
Holy shit.
I think the director's cut, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children Complete, came out in like 2009, and I watched that, and it's bad. That is a bad fucking movie. Holy shit, it is really fucking bad.
What is it even about? Because Sephiroth's in it, but isn't he dead at the end of the game?
Yeah, I mean, so basically it has the thinnest plot imaginable. They do vaguely justify how Sephiroth is in it, because he's in only the very last part of the last fight scene. Okay. Which I say that because the last fight scene is basically just a 50-minute long string of different action scenes just tied together with no story in between them. So it is just, now we're fighting a big dragon thing. Now we're fighting this dude. Now we're fighting this dude. And now these dudes became Sephiroth. And now Cloud's fighting Sephiroth. And it is just the most tedious thing in the world. It is an ugly fucking movie. And not even just because it's an old CG movie. It is intentionally ugly because they have the Cloud's character arc is that he does not resemble his character from the game at all. Certainly not his character from the end of Final Fantasy VII or anything in the last 15-ish hours of Final Fantasy VII when Cloud has a lot of character growth. And he is just this useless fucking whiny piece of shit that refuses to do anything, refuses to move the plot forward, refuses to talk to anybody. He's just out on his own. It's weirdly, the first hour of the movie is weirdly like Death Stranding because Cloud is like delivering packages in this like weird wasteland, and that's his job, I guess, is that he's a delivery man.
See, and this is why I was worried about the remake, because I'd heard kind of this legacy of Advent Children. I was worried they were going to do that to Cloud in the remake, and luckily they don't at all.
Yeah, that's
which is very good.
Yeah, because it has, Cloud in Advent Children has just there's nothing recognizable from the game in him. But so the whole like first 2/3 of the movie, because Cloud is in this funk, it is cloudy overhead. It is like overcast, and it's dark and dreary and gray. But it really just looks everything just looks incredibly washed out. It's like almost the entire movie has the same look as that one highway fight scene in Deadpool that is like this weird overcast day, and it's just this ugly fucking scene that just looks bad.
Oh, God.
Again, not ugly in a way that's like aesthetically interesting, because I think you can have aesthetically interesting ugly. It's just bad looking. But then, all of his friends show up and get one line of dialogue, because every single Final Fantasy VII character outside of Cloud and Tifa, and I guess Sephiroth, and then some of the comic relief Shinra characters, everybody else like Barrett and Red 13 and Ketchi and Yuffie and Vincent gets a couple more lines because it's Vincent. I guess people think he's cool even though he's the lamest of all the characters. Everybody else only gets like one line of dialogue when they show up, and Cloud doesn't talk to any of them. It's like, that's awful. That's a bad way to do this.
That's what people loved about Final Fantasy VII, was not seeing the characters.
Yes, and not seeing the party have fun and interact with each other, which is literally the only thing you would want from this movie, is to see get your like really good star-studded like great voice cast, because the voice cast is very good, and it's the same voice cast if you're playing like the remake in Japanese. It's the same people. But it's like, you just want to see them all hang out and have fun together. But they all come in, have one big line of dialogue, help Cloud out, and he defeats Bahamut, and then Cloud realizes that friendship is a thing. And you get the like third or fourth scene where he has some vision of Aerith, because they do that like 6 or 7 times over the course of the movie. And it loses all impact when it's not just once or twice that he sees Aerith in some sort of weird vision. And then after that, the clouds break and the sun comes in, and you realize that even if it's very sort of primitive CG, it doesn't mean that the movie has to look bad, because as soon as there's like oranges and blues in parts of the image, you're like, oh, right, this can look good. Like, this could just look like a movie and have some nice looking shots and some nice looking backgrounds and stuff. And they just, as a deliberate artistic decision, decided to make almost the entire movie look like fucking ass. And it is awful. And it is also a movie, I did not realize this, although it made sense when I saw this credit come up at the end, but it just hadn't occurred to me that the movie is directed by Tetsuya Nomura, who is not a film director. He is an artist and video game designer, not a film director. And it's the same thing they did with fucking Spirits Within, the movie that bombed so hard that it caused Squaresoft to have to basically combine with Enix in order to survive. That Spirits Within was directed by Hironobu Sakaguchi, who's the guy who directed Final Fantasies 1 through 5 and was heavily involved in the 6, 7, 8, and 9. Also, not a film director.
Yeah.
I get that it's like they're Final Fantasy dudes and they should probably be involved in a significant way in the project, but maybe hire a film director to direct your film is my advice for the video game industry.
Where could you find an anime director in Japan? Yeah. That's a tough one, Sean.
Yeah, it's weird. Advent Children is a shit movie. I want you to watch it so we can talk about it, Jonathan.
Okay, at some point we will. When we do, we're going to have to probably, at some point this summer, do a big Final Fantasy episode, or Final Fantasy VII episode, so maybe we can tie that in. Sean, I do want to give one piece of trivia that made me laugh inside very hard. I looked up the voice of Cloud in Japanese, and it's Takahiro Sakurai, great actor. The funniest thing, though, is you're talking about Cloud being all, edgy and stuff in that one. He is also the voice of Edward Cullen in Twilight, in the dubs of Twilight.
That makes sense.
I love the idea that Cloud and Edward Cullen are the same voice.
That makes sense.
And now I kind of want to watch Twilight in Japanese, because that's got to be the best way to experience Twilight. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, now do you want to give some brief spoiler-free impressions of The Last of Us Part 2?
Yes.
Okay. So we've both been playing this. We are both about 8 hours in. Mm-hmm. So I assume we're in roughly the same place.
Yeah.
And we're going to say very little, I think, here. Because, one, we don't want to spoil the story.
Yeah, because the marketing has not said what the plot is at all, which we have talked about before on this podcast, that the marketing has not revealed anything about the plot. Is why I said when I had read the leaked spoilers that it's like, the marketing straight up has not said what the plot is, which means it feels like we can't say what the plot is.
All you know from the marketing is that Ellie is on some kind of mission of revenge.
Yes, and people end up in Seattle at some point because they showed off that in the trailer.
But it's not just that, because we've talked about games without spoilers before. Yeah. I will also say after 8 hours, I am extremely mixed in ways that make me want to see the rest of it, because, not mixed in I want to put this down and not play it, but I do not have firm opinions on this game yet, other than things like it is a technical masterpiece.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. It is, I think, hands down the best looking game that has been made so far. It is utterly stunning. And especially it was nice going from having played PS3 Yakuza games and the original Final Fantasy VII for the past 3 months to then not just play a modern game running on modern hardware, but the new Naughty Dog game, that it is both a technical marvel, just in terms of the aesthetics, the lighting, the detail on clothing,
it's
texture.
Insane.
The character models are particularly the slightly up-resed and nicer looking models they use in the in-engine cutscenes, because they're in-engine cutscenes like Uncharted 4 did. So they're not, because Last of Us and all those games were pre-rendered cutscenes. So they have these extra nice looking hero model versions of the characters in those cutscenes. Is fucking hell. If you have a nice TV that has HDR, it has some of the best HDR I've seen.
Easily the best. Yeah, I have not played a ton of games with HDR yet, obviously, because my TV is new. This is the first game Final Fantasy VII I'm playing with HDR. Yeah. But this is one of the first PS4 exclusives I'm playing all the way through with it, and not just because I tried God of War and Spider-Man, looked at them, but it's, to my eye, the best I've seen so far of HDR because of just how much, because you talk about the lighting, that combined with the lighting, the range of colors on display, and when light breaks through trees, I'm down in my basement looking at this, and it looks like I'm outside in the world.
Yeah, and it is the naturalist aesthetic of The Last of Us, in these sort of natural lighting scenarios that, there's other than some of the stuff at the beginning of the game where you're in Jackson, which is the town that Tommy's from at the end of The Last of Us. They have electric lighting because of the dam and all that from the first game. But outside of that, all of it's just naturally lit.
Yeah.
And it just, the HDR, I think, really helps with that because it allows this really subtle gradation that natural lighting has that I think video games often have a really hard time reproducing. That, sort of electric lighting doesn't have that because it's just here's an intense light source that is sort of evenly spread across an area versus sunlight that is breaking through trees or around corners in a building with the door open. All that kind of stuff in the game just looks utterly gorgeous.
Yeah, the thing that blows me away about it visually the most, honestly, is the film grain effect.
Yes, it's really good.
It's really good because, so we've talked about this before over the years of this show, because I feel like the first game that really made a concerted effort at it was Mass Effect 1.
Yes, Mass Effect 1. And it was like semi-controversial at the time because it was a thing that some people liked and then some people fucking hated.
And I liked it. And I always like film grain effects because I like film grain. But I will be the first to admit that it has been imperfect for a long time. Mm-hmm. And like if you go back to Mass Effect 1, it hits the performance bad in that game in places. They layer it on so thick in that game, it doesn't look like 35 millimeter film. It looks like 16 or something, but not even. It doesn't look like real film grain.
It looks like you could pick out the grains and eat them.
Yes.
It's like
thick. So it winds up sometimes looking noisy, which is not what you want film grain to look like.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be noise. And then I think different games have done it to different varying degrees over the years. Last of Us 1 does it a little bit. This honestly looks like if you did the photo mode in Last of Us Remastered and turned on film grain, it's like that for the game, but not in still images that you take. Yeah. It's in the game, and it looks like, for the first time in a video game, real film grain, which is to say, it doesn't look like a surface layer put on top of other visuals. It looks like it is coming out of the visuals. The detail is refined by the grain, not obscured by it, which I think is what you get in some other games. It honestly adds richness and depth to the color and the image, and it doesn't hit the performance or any of the other stuff, which is what film grain effects often do. So it's jaw-dropping when you look at it.
Yeah, and one thing about it being a technical marvel is that it runs at a solid 30 frames per second. And if you... I looked at some of the Digital Foundry stuff that they did, and that is true of the base PS4 version as well.
Yeah.
And that is amazing to me. Because for reference, the original Last of Us on the PS3, the remastered version runs at a really locked 60. But the original PS3 release of The Last of Us does not run that great. It dips in lots of places. It's very inconsistent. And for this game to come out at the end of this generation, be pushing this hardware so hard, it looks so phenomenally good. It looks unlike any game I've played basically ever. Even compared to Uncharted 4, it impresses me at basically every turn. And it's running at basically a locked 30 frames per second is incredible.
Yeah, no, and it's very smooth, and it is kind of this funny thing with Naughty Dog, which is all their PS3 games ran at 30, and then they came to the PS4 and they all run at 60, and now their PS4 games run at 30, and maybe on the PS5 they'll run at 60, and this is kind of the cycle.
Yeah.
And I remember with Uncharted, I was worried because I played through Uncharted 1, 2, 3 in 60, and then 4 came out, and I'm like, is that going to bother me? And it doesn't, because it looks so good, and those games don't really need 60, although it's always nice to have.
Yeah, it's nice to have, but it's not like if Dragon Ball FighterZ ran at 30 frames per second, that game would be unplayable.
Right.
Last of Us, it's a slow-paced third-person shooter. It is fine to play at 30.
Totally fine. And if anything, I actually think one thing with the film grain effect is sometimes I think if you pumped that up to 60, I don't know if it would look as good. So at 30,
it might make the image look weirdly fuzzy.
Yeah. But anyway, it is a marvel, and that it's running on the fucking PS4. This old 7-year-old hardware now. I mean, the PS4 Pro is newer, but still, the PS4 Pro is not the most. It is not as powerful as the Xbox X or something.
Yeah.
They have limited resources to work with, and they're pulling this off. It's not a native 4K game, but I think it could fool the eye because it, Digital Foundry noted this. It's I think it's 1440p.
Yeah.
But their temporal anti-aliasing is so good, you'll never notice any problems with up-resing to 4K.
Yeah.
So it's really incredible, and this is kind of the first party PS4 game I'm playing in full on a 4K TV. But even just with the little comparisons I've seen to other games, it seems like it's a step up, and it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Absolutely,
too.
Yeah. It is amazing. It is particularly. I just remember vividly the opening 10 minutes or so that you get brief control over character and kind of riding a horse around as the sun is setting, and just being again,
these fuckers are showing off.
And my reference point was just having played the original Final Fantasy VII and watched Advent Children, a movie that, even if they sort of made it a little bit nicer for the director's cut version, is a CG movie from 2005. This looks, both in terms of art direction, and I think in many ways in terms of fidelity and lighting and technique, the in-game cutscenes of The Last of Us Part 2 look better to me in almost every way imaginable compared to Advent Children, which is fucking amazing.
Oh, well, put Advent Children aside, take a Hollywood CGI movie from 2005. I think it looks better than that.
Yeah, it is phenomenal.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. Okay, so Naughty Dog, they're technical geniuses. We know that.
Yes, and also on that, the animation stuff is also it's the best animation. Like the way that animations seamlessly blend into one another.
It's so crazy.
Like the number of animations and like your walk cycle that there are like this is also something I think a Digital Foundry video noted that is like cool. When you experience it in the game is there's a lot of if you're like walking sideways off of a ledge, there's a slightly different animation that plays of Ellie falling kind of a little bit more sideways rather than the classic video game. You sort of slide off of the geometry and whoop, and like just fall straight to the ground. It just feels like their animation systems have evolved to the point where it is hard to see the gaps in the animation, which is something if you play a lot of video games, you get very used to seeing. Here's the breaks in the animations. Here's where there's not really an animation fit for whatever movement the character is doing. So it sort of has the closest animation they have, and it's like, that's good enough for what this looks like. And there's never this feeling of that's good enough. It's just you don't think about the animations while you play the game.
That's what I was going to say. There aren't those video gaming moments where like you go, oh right, I'm playing a game. They're very few and far between.
Yeah,
they're there. It's a video game, but
yes,
like they're very rare.
There's little things of like certain animations that are inhumanly snappy because they need to be for the gameplay. Like there's little things like that, but other than that, it is fairly seamless.
Yeah, even down to, this is not a spoiler because this was from the original, when you're crafting on your guns and you like go to your workbench and they do like a very fast version of what you would do to actually mod the gun, and they've done it for every individual mod for every individual gun, and I'm like, yeah, that's why they crunched so fucking hard on this game.
Yes, yeah, that is one thing, of course, to be said, is that us marveling at what this game is able to do is not to excuse the shit work conditions and the lack of unionization in the game industry, because those are not necessary to create a game like this.
Yeah, and I'll say that can kind of transition into my overall thoughts so far. And again, these are unsettled. I could go darker than this. I could go, never mind, I think this is great. My impression after 8 hours so far, and this is early, is I feel like The Last of Us 2 is a whole lot of literal blood, sweat, and tears from developers, and a whole fuck a hell of a lot blood, sweat, and tears in-game to make a point that I think the first game made a hell of a lot more elegantly. That's my overall reaction so far.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, and this is partly because I know some stuff that happens later, that the part that I'm in, I'm waiting for the game to make the next turn, because I assume you're in the Seattle stuff, which is where I'm at, which it's very similarly paced to The Last of Us 1 in that there's like a lot of sort of heavy story stuff at the beginning, and the first 3 to 5-ish hours is sort of fairly focused. You're moving through different environments and a lot of story stuff happens, and then you end up in a big area, which in this game is Lost Legacy-esque. It's a big area. You can kind of go around a lot of different places. There's a lot of routes, weird like extra little things to find, which is cool to see. But it reminds me a lot of the Detroit sequence in The Last of Us 1, where that's where they really sort of double down on, now we're going to like introduce you to all the different combat mechanics and make them and sort of complicate them in different ways and sort of build up the game part of the game, while the story stuff is very sort of nice character building moments between your main characters who are together, but it's very thin. And I think it has the same thing that Last of Us 1 does, where that happens too long. Like, it needs to do the next major story shift and not the breadcrumbs. And I'm waiting for, like, we need to have, like, the next big story shift in the story to move into its next mode. I think it takes too long to get to that point.
I mean, it is just worth saying, it is an incredibly dark game.
Oh, yeah.
It is, and I genuinely think, like Kotaku did a really good write-up with some trigger warnings and spoilers you might want to know if there are certain things that could trigger you in this game. And I would recommend, if you are at all worried about that, I think there are genuine things in this that are upsetting and could turn you off from the game. And there are things I think are ill-advised, and there are things I think that are interesting and good, but it is even, like, you could call the first game dark, and you will not realize how much human levity there is in the first game until you play Last of Us 2. Like, it is incredibly oppressively dark, and I'll again, reserving judgment to see where it's going with all of that, but, like, this is an extremely heavy video game.
Yeah, although I would say that one thing I like is that there is a lot of levity, I think, still. Like, there's a lot of very, like, nice, quiet human interactions between Ellie and Dina, which we can, say that much, that they're together in this section of the game. And that stuff, it's a lot like sort of like Left Behind in that way, that there's lots of you kind of poking around. There's it's got to be like a 3-hour stretch where there's hardly any combat at all. It's like occasionally you'll run into like an infected if you're exploring some of the houses, but you're just kind of riding around this horse trying to figure out how to get where you're trying to go, and then having interactions with each other and like small conversations, revealing a lot of it is like sort of ways to get the player to know more about Dina's past and their relationship and stuff. And like a lot of the tone of the game is I find it very somber like that. That is, there is this sort of extreme inciting incident near the beginning of the game that causes the revenge plot, because they've said it's a revenge plot and Ellie's trying to get revenge for something. And that hangs really heavily over everything. But it is not like Ellie and Dina are like every single second of their lives consumed by this need for vengeance. It is the goal they're moving towards, but normal human interactions happen between them along the way, and that's something I find interesting.
Oh, sure, and it's still there, and like this is still a Naughty Dog game. This is still the best writing in the industry, by far the best acting in the industry.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
it's incredible.
The game starts with a little monologue from Joel, and like the amount of nuance in Troy Baker's voice and like how it cracks and where the writing gives him room to like breathe is, there's no one else is working even close to at that level, I think, with performance and like just basic human writing. Like, as you say, writing around, talking about shit you see off in the distance, and then that relates to something else, and it feels like two human teenagers. Because what is she in this game? 18?
19, I think,
yeah. I can still call her a teenager. Yes. Running around, having those kind of conversations feels very authentic and real. I do think there's a way Last of Us 2 is pretty carefully designed to kind of curdle anything human that happens pretty quickly. But we'll see again. I don't want to get into it too much here.
Yeah. Because I will say that, like, I have found... Because I had a moment playing the game last night that was... I had this, like, incredible... it felt incredibly tense. And nothing was happening. Like, I was just crawling through a building, and there was this slow sense of dread being built up by story stuff sort of around the edges. But there wasn't, like... Here's, like, this direct, like, someone's getting their head blown off, and oh my god, that wasn't happening. It was just this sense of fear.
I think I know what moment you're talking about.
And it's just a sense of fear of, like, I don't know, like, I can kind of expect things that might be around the next corner, but I don't know if they're going to be around the next corner. And I was just going through this building slowly, and it was interesting the way the game was able to, just because it's been a long time since I've consumed a piece of media that gave me this, like, gut, just like, is something going to happen? And kind of like almost nothing. I mean, stuff happened, but it wasn't the stuff that I thought maybe was going to happen. And there's just a sense of every time I opened a door, I'm like, is this going to be the door I opened that like a cutscene starts and the game... There's this like fear of losing control over the game and then the game being able to do something. And there's a really interesting dynamic there that I'm excited to see how that plays out. Because sure. I think the point that we're at in the game has yet to play a lot of its cards in terms of what it's really trying to do.
Sure, and I've got an open mind. I will say, like, if you're in the same boat I am, where some of the stuff early on is like so deeply brutal, it turns you off a little bit. I did just spoil myself on a lot of the rest of it because I just needed to know some of what it was going to do to go forward, and I was fine with that. Mm-hmm. Some people will kill themselves before they'll spoil themselves. Yeah, we're not those kind of people. So
again, you knew what was... Yeah, I knew about like the inciting incident before I played the game and stuff.
Yeah. So, that's okay. It's, it is obviously an immaculately made game, not just technically. Like, the gameplay is not hugely changed from the original. It's very similar, but it is rock solid. And
I think it's really smartly expanded. It's not, they didn't they didn't try to reinvent the wheel, but there's lots of smart ways that Ellie's move set is kind of expanded. You being able to crawl, jump, like your ability to move around the environment, and different kind of combat moves you can do. They've expanded the melee system a lot, so that is way more robust. So it's a lot of like kind of nips and tucks, and then a lot of it is more improved, I think, encounter design with wider areas, more ways to approach encounters.
I did play through an encounter last night that because I'm of two minds about so much of this game. Because I agree with all of that you just said, and like this is not like the jump from Uncharted 3 to 4 where they completely like stripped down and rebuilt the combat system and made it really, really great. Last of Us already had such a solid foundation that they're really, as you say, kind of nipping and tucking and building on it. But I agree, those are largely very good changes. And the encounter designs are often very like ambitious and interesting and tense and scary and all those things you kind of know from this game. There's a general, and I think part of it is because I agree with you, the section we're in I think goes on too long.
Yeah.
There's a general feeling of like, I have played this and I played it again when I replayed the game and I played it in the DLC twice and like sometimes I want a little more new. I did go through an encounter last night that is this like multi-tier long encounter in a suburban neighborhood with human enemies. And it was kind of, I did have a pretty good time with it because it throws a lot at you and it really feels like a culmination where it builds to a big story reveal and it's like testing you a lot. And at the same time, I was also like, I'm killing so many people and the amount of like, they have people making the blood gurgle sounds as they die. And when you kill their dogs, they yell out for their dogs. And if you kill the human, the dog moans for its human and like all this. And I'm like, this feels a little bit like a parody of itself. The amount they're ladling it on is a little... And, like, I also don't think, like, whatever the game is about, I don't think it does not feel like it's accounting for the amount of violence as well as I think the original game did. So we'll see. Hold off on that. But, like, it ladles it on very thick.
Yeah, I will say that the thing they did where like people call out the names for other people, sometimes it works really well. There've been a couple of moments where I'm like, oh, that was like, I didn't even think about it until afterwards. I'm like, oh shit, that was because they talk about it in some article or something. It got passed around on Twitter. That was the thing they were doing. But then oftentimes I do find it is like very heavy-handed. It is very just like everybody's like, they got Jim. Oh, she killed Bob. Oh, Elder, Abigail, no. It's like it triggers too frequently and it feels unrealistic. It's like people don't just constantly say everybody's name all the time.
Well, and like it's, I get the point the game's trying to make about violence and all that, but it's like, you're making me do it. I cannot advance in the game if I don't kill all these people. And you are doing all this, like, making me feel like they're drowning in their own pool of blood, and you make me look at, like, the just brutal animations and stuff, and I despise the dog stuff in this. I truly...
I haven't gotten to the dog stuff yet.
Okay.
So you're a little bit further.
The game can go fuck itself on that. Like, genuinely, I do not like that it's in there. I think it is in poor taste, and I do not like the way... Nope. And I don't like even fighting fantasy animals in games. It's just not something I really... Like, it's the one thing that's ever held me back from playing Monster Hunter is I want to go, like, make friends with the cool animal and, like, ride it around. I don't want to, like, brutally murder it. And, like... When you get that to like house dogs that are animated or like domestic dogs that are animated to look and like they run around like domestic cute dogs that just also happen to attack, and when you like kill their owner they go and like then you have to shoot them in the face, like that there's a general sense of, to me, I said this on Twitter last night, there's a reason the term kicking a puppy is what you use to describe cheap cloying storytelling. It's cheap and cloying.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, and I suspect I won't have that reaction because I don't have, like, I'm not bothered by, as, like, obviously if it's, like, a real, I don't like it in live-action movies, even if it's clear to me that, like, any movie made in the last 50 years is not going to actually hurt the animal, but I still don't like it when it's an actual animal, because they can't consent to what is being done to them on the movie set and stuff, right?
Yeah.
If it's a like totally digital fictional representation in that way, I've never really had a problem with it, so I think I'll probably be fine. Yeah, but it is one of those things that like you say, it's a trigger warning kind of thing that people have.
I also just genuinely don't think it adds anything to the thematic tapestry of the game other than, oh my god, there's so much suffering, isn't there? And I'm like, yeah, I think I got that when you beep.
Sure, yeah. I guess for me...
That's my
I guess what I'm saying is that for the way I, like, experience that stuff, and that it doesn't feel like in addition on top of we're killing humans, and we're killing dogs too, to me it's not... I don't experience an emotional reaction that is different between those two things.
There's a reason why, like, Grand Theft Auto does not populate its world with, like, little kids that you can go slit their throats.
Yeah. But it does have dogs that you can shoot.
I don't like that either. I don't like it. I think it's okay if it's like big game and you're hunting in like Red Dead or something, because also Red Dead doesn't make you go kill deer if you don't want to. that's my soapbox, and I'll get off of it.
Okay.
All right, let's do some news.
Okay, what's going on in the news, Jonathan?
Well, our first piece of news is really sad, and that is that Sir Ian Holm, the beloved British actor who played, I think most famously for people today, Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings trilogy by Peter Jackson, obviously a longtime star of the stage and screen who was winning, Shakespeare awards in the fucking 60s for different Shakespeare plays he did. And has been in lots and lots of stuff. I think other prominent genre roles he did are like Alien. Mm-hmm. I always remember his fucking role in The Aviator by Martin Scorsese, which is short but is hilarious. He was 88 when he passed away this week. You could list many, many roles. But, we love Lord of the Rings, and Bilbo Baggins looms large in our hearts. And I will say it made me very sad because Bilbo is one of my favorite fictional characters in the history of fiction, like top 5. Mm-hmm. I've named pets after Bilbo. And I will say, when I think of Bilbo Baggins, the portrayal that comes first to my mind is Sir Ian Holm. Forever and always. There have been other great Bilbos. There's been the animated Bilbo. There's been Martin Freeman. But he's number one in my heart.
Yeah, I agree. And then, Alien is one of my all-time favorite movies. And his role as Ash is a big reason for that, because he plays the spoilers for Alien. He's an android. He's a robot man. And that turn he makes of just being utterly inhumanly unemotional, like a complete disregard for any human life. And he has, the line about the alien being the perfect hunter that is just sort of blood curdling, and how he just doesn't give a fuck. It is just one of those. It is, I think, oftentimes hard for actors to truly capture this sense that this character, it does not matter to this character whether or not humans die, and it's a very pure sort of cold-bloodedness, or white-bloodedness for Ash, that is really powerful in that movie.
Yeah. I mean, you just go through his list of roles. There's so many good ones. There's some trash in there, as you get with any prolific actor, but a lot of good stuff. And it's, The Fellowship of the Ring is one of my absolute favorite movies. It is so, to me, defined by his performance, even though he's really only in the beginning of that movie. Mm-hmm. And that movie is going to be turning 20 years old next year. Man, it makes me sad. It's because you talk about all the things that make his Ash so perfect, and the things that make his Bilbo perfect are completely the opposite.
Yes, exactly.
Which is all the human warmth he could convey, and the sense of depth as a person that Bilbo has, and the trick of the beginning of Lord of the Rings is that you, especially if you're doing it without doing a Hobbit adaptation, which is what Peter Jackson did, you have to convey to the audience that this is the Bilbo Baggins who went on this incredible adventure and has friendships with dwarves and has a wizard come visit him and is going to throw a crazy birthday, and he's a little kind of mischievous scoundrel, but he is also very warm, and the people he loves, he is extremely generous to, and he also has regrets, and all these things that are there in the book, because Bilbo is very much the star of that first chapter of the book. And then Ian Holm just brings it so perfectly onto screen. And if you don't, that's one of those roles that if you got it wrong, even a little bit, even if you just didn't get it perfectly right, if you got it okay, if you got it fine, I don't think the movie works. I don't think the movie works unless you buy Bilbo Baggins. And you buy him to a degree that, man, I think of him sitting on the hill with Gandalf. Gandalf, my friend, this will be a night to remember.
Yeah.
I think of, this is my 11th birthday. I think of him giving the speech. I think of him at the end of Return of the King in the old age makeup, asking for the ring one last time. Mm-hmm. I don't want to oversay that's Ian Holm's whole legacy. It's obviously not. But for me, it's the thing I'm most grateful for from his career for what it had on my life,
Yeah.
Yeah. So rest in peace, Ian Holm. We have talked about his work many times before. Mm-hmm. And we'll probably talk about it again.
Yeah.
At different points. So, all right. Let's see. Can I rant about something real quick, Sean?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, let's make a hard turn. So, AMC, Cinemark, and Regal Cinemas, which are the three biggest theater chains in the United States. Mm-hmm. They're the three nationwide, that are in every state. They are all set to reopen in the United States in early July, on or around July 15th, for the movies Mulan, Disney's Mulan, which is set to come out July 15th, and Warner Brothers' Tenet, the new Christopher Nolan movie, on July 31st. They are all paying lip service to doing their enhanced cleaning procedures, which means they're going to take their minimum wage staff and ask them to wipe stuff down, maybe?
Yeah.
But all of them, at first at least, this changed the other day, but they all initially announced that they were not requiring customers to wear masks. The AMC CEO said in an interview with Variety, quote, "We did not want to be drawn into a political controversy. We thought it might be counterproductive if we forced mask wearing on those people who believe strongly that it is not necessary." Which means you're forcing a deadly disease on people who don't think dying is unnecessary.
Yeah, it's like it is the utter parody. And, this is by far not the first instance of this in America. Global warming is, I think, the biggest one. But it is another instance of somehow science being so grossly politicized that this isn't a left-right partisan issue. It's not only those damn lefties are trying to get me to wear a mask. Fuck them. I'm not going to wear any damn mask. I'm going around coughing on everybody's faces to protect my rights. What is political about the basic common sense public health fact that if you wear a mask, you will be safer, and everybody around you will be safer, so fucking do it.
It's because we have a fascist for president and a fascist political party as one of our two political parties, and the media has decided that those are just that and normal liberal democracy are just two equal sides of the same coin, and that's how we're going to present it no matter what.
And that being factually true and being stupidly wrong, those are just, two sides of the same coin. Really, those two positions, 2 + 2 equaling 4, and 2 + 2 equaling fuck off, motherfucker. Those two statements clearly have the exact same truth value, and we should have two people that represent both those sides debating the virtues of mathematics and get the fuck off my lawn, you shout racial epithet, right? And those two, rational positions hold the same stake in our society, unfortunately.
After some backlash, AMC did back down on this. They are going to require they're going to require masks. To be clear, a lot of people still aren't going to wear them, and they will be asking minimum wage teenagers to enforce this.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to enforce it.
They're not going to be able to enforce it, and I also think we're going to hear about people getting shot at movie theaters because the people who don't wear masks also have guns, and they like to shoot people. So we're going to hear about that. Cinemark also backed down. I don't know if Regal has yet. Either way, I want to just make something clear to our listeners in the United States. Don't go to the movies.
No! For the love of God.
There is no safe way to reopen movie theaters right now. There just isn't. There is no safe way because you are in small contained spaces with recirculated air inside next to other people. That is the highest risk category for COVID transmission. We don't know a ton about the science of COVID. It is the novel coronavirus for a reason. But these things we do seem to know, which is that if you are outside, you are relatively distant from other people, and you have a mask, the stakes for getting it are low.
Yeah.
If you are inside, there is recirculated air, which there is in air-conditioned theaters in the summer, and you are next to other people in contained spaces where air is bouncing around, and if other people, you can wear masks, it's not 100%, that is the higher risk category. Don't go to the movies. Even if they could make everybody in there wear masks, and even if they do their thing where they're like, we're only going to have 50% capacity, so you don't have to sit next to blah, 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 blah. If they do all of that, that still is risky. It's still risky. And it's not...
for nothing. For no gain.
For no gain. For no gain. Movies are not that important. There's a little bit of risk in going to the grocery store, right? But you need groceries. Yes. You cannot live without food.
Yeah, there's risk in reopening schools, but we have to figure out something we can't just have every student, every child in America not have schooling for an entire year is not a practical solution.
Yes, even if you don't believe in the value of education, you probably believe in the value of parents not killing their children at home because they get so annoyed.
Yes, because we definitely got close to that with a couple of those fuckers.
Yes. So, movies are not important. And this is a movie podcast. This is a game podcast. We love going to the movies. Me especially, I love movie theaters. But I can watch a movie at home. It's fine. Disney's Mulan is not so important that I can't just wait for it to go on Disney Plus.
Yeah, just, if you just can't wait, watch the old Mulan, and then watch the old Mulan 2. It's probably fine.
Or find, like, the actual Chinese Mulan.
Yeah.
Or I think there's a Japanese Mulan. Watch Mulans from, actual Asia, that actual Asian people made.
Yeah.
Try that. You don't need to go to a movie theater. It's just not important. I'm not going. If I'm not going, you don't need to go. I was someone who goes to the movies every week. I like that. I also want to say I hate these chains and I hope they all go under. Because these are when I have to go to one of these chains, that's when I'm miserable going to the movies. I fucking hate them. They all need to die and something better needs to be built in their ashes. And this is evidence why. Because this also, we have to say, is evidence of a broken business model. Because the main reason why these theaters weren't doing the masks, it's not the political controversy. It's because they make most of their money from concessions. And if you have everyone wear masks, you cannot have them buy concessions. Because you cannot have a mask on and drink a soda with the straw. Just doesn't really work that way. You can't munch popcorn if you have a mask on. And the way the whole business model works is that the studios have been taking more and more and more of the ticket sales, which is why concession prices in the US have gone up and up and up until we now pay like $10 for a normal size popcorn. Not a large size popcorn, a normal size popcorn. And that is why that happens. Now, studios, if they really cared about public safety during all this, they could have said, hey, studios, don't sell concessions because we want you to have everyone wear masks. We're going to split these ticket profits with you 50-50. They didn't do that. No. They're not changing any of that. So that's why these theaters are doing this. That still makes the theaters craven assholes, but they should just stay shut down because there's no way to do this and turn a profit and be safe.
Yeah.
So don't do it.
You know what they should do? If they're going to do this, they should sell muzzles full of popcorn, like all the people going are fucking horses, and they're just munching on popcorn.
It's the Bane mask from The Dark Knight Rises, but with popcorn in it.
It's just like everybody sitting in the theater, just like munching on popcorn like they're horses in a stable. Would be great.
It's a 2-compartment mask. You can open the front and put more popcorn in, close it, and then a second compartment opens, and you can eat the popcorn.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I like this idea, Sean. You should be in marketing for the movie theaters. All right. Finally, this week. EA had a little show where one piece of news was made.
Yeah, so this is welcome to Not E3 2020, Jonathan, the segment we do on the show where we talk about all the things that would have been at E3 2020 but aren't because E3 2020, one, didn't happen, and two, if it would, it's already over. We are in the period where E3 would be a week old by now, which is weird to think about. A couple of quick things before we talk about EA Play. Sony did have a couple of small clarifications from their event last time, because they've been actually regularly putting out short videos on their YouTube channel featuring some of the games from that show. One thing we now know is that Horizon Forbidden West is targeting 2021, so it's confirmed not in that initial launch. It sounds like not launch window. If I were to guess, I would probably say they said that is fall 2021 is what targeting 2021 sounds like, and maybe it gets, classic video game could get delayed to 2022. But then they also said something in that video that, as someone who liked Horizon Zero Dawn quite a bit, piqued my interest. Just even though this obviously would be in the sequel, it's just nice to hear someone say it's going to feature dozens of new robot enemies, because the entire gameplay mechanics of Horizon are all about, here are these really elaborate, cool, weird robot monsters, and they all have really fascinating ways to kind of take them down. And it's like a Monster Hunter light. So just seeing some of the new robot enemies and them talking about this is one of the ways we're really expanding the game. That sounds cool.
Can I also say something about that game?
Yes.
Because I forgot to make this joke last time. They called that game Horizon Forbidden West.
Yes.
Which is it's fine as a title.
Yes. Everyone is just going to call it Horizon 2 forever. That's how I'm going to call
it. They had the chance to call it Horizon Aloy Goes West.
Aloy
Goes West,
yes.
And they didn't call it that, and I will not be buying it because they missed the perfect title.
That's a reasonable reason not to buy the game. I
agree.
Yeah. Forbidden West is a bad title. It's another one of those in a long line of bad video game titles that sound like they're the title of the spin-off novel,
yes.
That they sell in a bargain bin in Target. It should have just been called Horizon 2 or something, or Horizon Aloy Goes West.
Horizon 2 Dawn,
yeah.
Aloy Goes West.
Horizon 2, here we go again.
There we go. Yeah. Every video game sequel.
Yeah. And this was sort of known, basically, I think, when we did the last podcast, but it has been sort of officially clarified that Spider-Man Miles Morales, we knew it was a standalone game, but there were rumors, indications that it was going to be about the scale of Uncharted Lost Legacy. And over the course of the last week, Insomniac put up a thing on the PS blog, like specifically making that comparison from Insomniac. So that is what that game is. It is a standalone game that is roughly equivalent to what Lost Legacy was to in Uncharted 4, and is being built to take full advantage of the PS5 hardware. And that quote sounded to me like it was code for this is just going to be a PS5 game.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of Sony stuff. CD Projekt Red has delayed Cyberpunk 2077 again, now from September 17th to November 19th, which is, if these consoles are coming out in the fall, those consoles are either going to be out basically like that week or earlier. Like, there is no later date than November 19th that the new consoles would be out. They have said that they're still going to plan on doing like a bigger expanded version of an updated Cyberpunk 2077 in 2021 that will be freely upgradable for anybody that has the previous gen version. So that has not changed, but they have said that if you play Cyberpunk 2077 on a next gen console, there will be advantages to that, but they will also expand those advantages and take more advantage of all the power of the consoles in a future update in 2021.
It does mean that the most exciting video game coming out with the new consoles will be a last gen game.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. This is going to be the Assassin's Creed 4 this generation, I think, is Cyberpunk 2077 coming right there.
Yeah, and it definitely is going to be the kind of thing where, like, if Halo Infinite I can play on my Xbox One. If somehow Spider-Man Miles Morales winds up being a cross-gen, it sounds like it probably isn't. But
I definitely don't think so.
I'm just saying if. Then I would say, okay, I'll wait, because the game I want to play most right now is Cyberpunk that I can play just fine on my current console.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I'm curious to see like what the upgrades will be, and then what like they're planning to be the upgrades for the future update in the future.
I will say it is a good date for me to play that game, because one thing we learned when they announced how University of Iowa is adapting COVID is we, after Thanksgiving break, will not come back. They're not bringing people back. So because we only have 2 weeks after Thanksgiving break every year. Yeah, so they're just going to do the last 2 weeks remotely, which means November 19th is around Thanksgiving break, which means I get to go home and I get to play Cyberpunk.
Yeah, they're not, as far as I know, they're not going to do that for public schools. So we are starting 1 week later than we would otherwise for students, but I will be going back to work on the same day I would regardless. Just an extra week of planning. Planning for the unplannable, which I'm looking forward to. And then the other piece of news before the EA Play stuff, and I mean, this is the best piece of video game news that was dropped, so maybe it's sort of stealing EA's very limited thunder that they had. But Nintendo dropped out of nowhere, because this is what Nintendo does now. It's interesting that everybody else is sort of saving up stuff, like EA and Sony and Microsoft are saving stuff up for big events where they'll do like a 30-minute, 50-minute thing to show off a bunch of games. And Nintendo, that historically has led the charge for, we are not doing big press conferences, we're just doing regular, concentrated 30-minute shows that show off a bunch of stuff with Nintendo Directs. They have abandoned the Nintendo Direct model and instead are just, we were going to make a Paper Mario and then release a trailer for it, and the Paper Mario will come out 1 month later. And then now they have also done the same thing for a video game that, as far as I can tell, is called New Pokemon Snap.
Yes, and to revise what you said, this actually was part of a mini Pokemon Direct. It was a 15-minute presentation. They also announced some other Pokemon, like mobile games and stuff. But the main attraction, because that came out the day of the new Pokemon DLC.
That's right.
Which I've played a little bit of, but not enough to review it. So that's why I didn't talk about it. But new Pokemon Snap was the big thing out of that, because people
it's the only thing I heard about out of it.
Because people have wanted a new Pokemon Snap for 22 years.
Yes, Pokemon Snap, maybe the best Pokemon game.
And it looks fucking gorgeous.
Yes, it looks very nice. I really hope that they just call it New Pokemon Snap, like New Nintendo 3DS. That would be
or New Super Mario Bros. I think that's totally. They do this all the time.
Because the logo they have on the thing, it doesn't look like it's project titled Pokemon Snap or something. It is being developed by Bandai Namco, which is a partnership that Nintendo's been doing for a while. Like Bandai Namco is like the bulk of the development of the last couple Smash Brothers have been in a partnership with Bandai Namco. So it's a new Pokemon Snap on Nintendo Switch. It was a thing that it looks very cool. It also made me feel very old because I had this like, yes, a new Pokemon Snap. And then I'm like, and almost all these Pokemon, I don't even know what they are because I'm old and I haven't like really played a Pokemon game in like 15 years. So I'm an old motherfucker that doesn't know what Pokemon is anymore.
But I will say, assuming these are the actual graphics of the game, which you would assume because Nintendo does not do the thing.
Yeah, it looks like it's in-engine stuff.
Yeah. It looks like the most gorgeous game on the Switch. I mean, like, those water effects are out of this world. It looks really, really nice, and I cannot wait to play it. And a lot of people were like, why didn't Pokemon Sword and Shield look like this? And I'm like, because you weren't playing them on rails.
Yeah, they're totally different games. It is why, Resident Evil in-game graphics did not look as good as the arcade House of the Dead machine. Like, they're just different things.
Yes. But anyway, new Pokemon Snap, most exciting thing from this week's announcements.
Yes, absolutely. I am pro Pokemon Snap. Make more Pokemon Snaps. Thank you for finally doing this, Nintendo. It's a long time coming.
Yes.
But then that finally brings us to the main event, Jonathan, which is EA had announced this forever ago that they were going to do their EA Play event, which is what they called their E3 thing from last year. And they just said, like, hey, we're going to have basically a 50-minute show, and the impression was this is what we would have shown at E3. I watched the whole thing live because I'm an idiot, and I wanted to take the notes. Jonathan, how much of this did you consume?
None, not a second. I've seen the Star Wars Squadron screenshots.
Okay, so you didn't even watch the trailer?
No, I don't care.
Okay, yeah. So I watched the whole thing. I took my notes. Just spoilers for this event, if you didn't watch it. If it seems like, boy, it just doesn't feel like any news came out of a 50-minute presentation from one of the biggest video game publishers in the world, Electronic Arts, that feels weird. It's because they announced almost nothing. Almost nothing. It is amazing. So let's break this down bit by bit, because I don't think this honestly will take very long, because it's mostly me saying, and then they showed they showed a person talking about something that is not a video game. So they started off with Andrew Wilson, who's the CEO of Electronic Arts. And he had sort of this part was actually kind of cool that he directly addressed Black Lives Matter in the protests and COVID, and it was something that it feels like has been missing from a couple of these things that have been happening recently, that like is more like directly addressing what's going on and making a pro statement about a lot of stuff that's like was good to hear. But yeah, so that was just a cool way to kind of start it off and felt nice. Greg Miller of Kind of Funny Games, formerly of IGN, was hosting it. I think he hosted EA Play last year. I mostly mentioned that just because it still feels weird to see someone who is like, I guess he's a YouTube influencer now, but was like a member of the gaming press for years and years and years at IGN, is like hosting these events, and it always just feels like that's kind of weird. But that was them all setting it up, and it was the slickest of all these live streams, because they had Greg Miller was on a nice looking set, and he sort of segued between all the different segments and stuff. And so the kind of presentational quality of it was sort of nice. Then they had a long segment about Apex Legends, where they played a couple of different like trailers of, look at all the awards that Apex Legends has won. And then Apex Legends has currently been in their 5th season of content for a while. So it was mostly them talking about stuff that, as far as I know, is already, if you booted up Apex Legends 2 weeks ago, you would be already playing this stuff. So they talked about that for a long time, and then they talked about Apex Legends Season 5 Fortune's Favor, which is new stuff in Apex Legends. And as someone who only played Apex Legends for around a month or two after it came out, and then I had fun and I kind of fell off of it, I could not tell what was new and what was old. I could not tell what was interesting about it. It was just like, this is utterly incomprehensible to me. If you're trying to convince someone who has either never played Apex Legends or is a lapsed Apex Legends player like myself, it was not successful in selling me on coming back to Apex Legends, because like, I don't know what this looks so confusing. So
they showed more of Season 5, but they didn't announce Season 6.
No, Season 6, there was no announcement of a new character. The main thing they talked about was an in-game event called Armed and Dangerous. Then I have a quote here that I love. It's the Armed and Dangerous event, and they're bringing shotties and snipers back, but now all armor is evil armor. And that was the sentence of like, what the fuck does that mean? What do you mean all armor is evil armor? I have no idea. And it showed the Mirage, one of the characters from Apex Legends. He was wearing like black armor. Like, what the fuck what is evil armor? And it was like this, what is the point of this? Because you're only talking to people who are already actively playing Apex Legends and have been playing the game since it was out. And to everybody else, that's just gobbledygook. That's not just generic video game talk that like a normal video game player could parse what you're saying. That is Apex Legends specific like jargon that is meaningless to everybody else. Of like, I don't know what evil armor is. Then their big thing was, this is the thing they kept on hammering home with almost all these trailers, is that Apex Legends is moving to Steam. So EA has put EA Access. This is not stuff they said here. This is stuff that I just know around the edges. EA Access, their sort of Game Pass-esque model, has been available, connected through Steam since last fall, I believe. And so EA has been steadily putting out their PC games also on Steam, not just on their own client Origin, which is historically where they have been. And so that is the level of thing that they consider to be an interesting announcement is Apex Legends is another EA game that is also going to be able to be launched from your Steam client if that's how you want to launch Apex Legends as opposed to your Origin client. Exciting announcement. There will be cross-play this fall with Origin, Steam, PS4, and Xbox One, and also a Nintendo Switch version coming this fall. And excited. That's cool. It's cool that they're putting out a Switch port. Nice they're doing crossplay. I also wrote, I wonder if they'll eventually make an Apex Legends mobile version, because that was, I thought, maybe what they were going to do, and then they said a Switch port. I'm like, oh, I guess it's not on the Switch yet. That's okay.
Yeah.
So that's the first game. That's the first thing they talked about. Very exciting announcements, Jonathan. Moving on, Lindsay Pearson from Maxis, which are the people who make Sims, was on stream, and she talked about Sims for a little bit. They showed a video that felt like, those occasionally you watch like a car commercial or something that you don't know is a car commercial, and it's like this heartfelt story about a family and driving across the country to spread their father's ashes on like the West Coast or whatever. At the end, you're like, oh, this is a commercial for Toyota. This is the most emotionally manipulative capitalist bullshit ever. They showed a trailer that was basically like that, like a bunch of people talking about it. And then in Sims, like I really was able to be myself and find myself. And it's nice that they were talking about diversity, but the way it was framed was the most like we are using progressive politics to make money thing that just kind of felt weird, and it gave me a weird feeling. And so they did that. They showed that video. Then then they said The Sims 4 on Steam today. And they showed a trailer for The Sims 4. I want to make it clear. This is not new content for The Sims 4. They've released a huge amount of expansions and stuff for that game. This is not an announcement of new content for The Sims 4. No, they spent about 5 minutes talking about The Sims 4 leading up to Sims 4 is going to be on Steam.
Well, there you go.
Thanks for doing that. Yeah, you didn't even announce new content for that video game. You just announced a new platform. Not even really a new platform. Another storefront it's available on is what they announced. It's already on PC.
But hey, Sean, in my ongoing thesis that PC gamers are kind of assholes, the uproar of not being able to launch their games from their preferred launcher probably does lead EA to think there are people who find that exciting. So
there are people who find that exciting. I don't understand them. I don't understand why people make a big deal about having to have multiple different storefronts on your PC. It's like fucking whatever.
Yeah, get a life.
Yeah,
or buy a console.
It's the same. It's the same. Whether you play it on Origin, whether you play it off of itch.io, whether you play it off of fucking Good Old Games or Steam. I own PC games on a bunch of different platforms. I don't give a fuck if I own Fallout on Steam or on Good Old Games. It's the same. It's the game, and I just click on the game icon and then I play the game. It's fine. It's not an interesting thing to announce at your press conference. Don't make me watch 5 minutes about The Sims 4 if you're not even going to announce new content. Moving on. Alex Ackerman from the Respawn social team was on the stream, and he talked about Steam ports for a little bit more. So basically the whole first half of the show is talking about ports of the games to Steam. Then they showed a trailer for Command & Conquer Remastered, a game that came out 2 weeks ago. People seem to like Command & Conquer. This is me saying this in my notes. People seem to like Command & Conquer Remastered, but boy, we're like 15 minutes into this, and they haven't talked about a new video game yet. And then somebody said you can expect 7 new games coming to Switch from EA in the next 12 months. And it's nice that EA, what has it been, 3 years that the Switch has been out at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like by the end of the Switch's 4th year on the market, EA will have about 7 games on the Switch, which is like, good job, EA. You're one of the biggest publishers of video games in the world. You just totally missed the Switch completely, and then you're finally putting out Giddy games on the Switch, which is not to say that once the PS5 and Xbox Series X come out that the Switch will be irrelevant, but it's going to take a hit in like the public mindshare once it's not the newest console on the market.
Right.
And it feels like EA maybe really fucked up by not putting the games out on the Switch when the Switch was like the big shiny new thing that was breaking every record in the world. It's hilarious to me. Then they talked about their EA Originals games, which is their indie game initiative. They had a weird video that was a bunch of animated versions of indie developers talking about their stuff, which I just thought was like, it was a cool looking video, but it felt like an expensive thing to make for, I don't know why they made it. Then Haze Light Studios, which is the studio that made Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, one of the funniest titles for a video game ever. And then A Way Out, the video game that everybody forgot happened. That's like the video game, like prison break game that was like a co-op thing. So Joseph Fares from Haze Light Studios, he's the guy who said fuck the Oscars at the Game Awards last year. And they reminded you of that because they showed that clip again, but they censored it. So this is where there was just a lot of video of them talking about Joseph Fares and them showing, oh, look at all the outrageous shit Joseph Fares has done on all these live streams. And I'm sitting here thinking like, and I would not be shocked at all if like 1 year from now there's a huge controversy about like this dude abusing someone or some shit happens, because I don't know why you'd be like highlighting this behavior that seems troubling to me, that all the shit he does on live streams. And then I said, we're 20 minutes in and no new video game yet. EA getting behind Joseph Fares, like, this still feels like a massive scandal waiting to happen, blah, 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 blah. And then, then he talks about, because he has also directed, like, 3 movies, so they started showing a bunch of clips from the movies that he's directed, which are, like, years ago. This is before he made Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. He directed some movies. And then I say, this video is still happening in my notes. And then finally they announced their new game, It Takes Two, which is a co-op action-adventure platformer. They showed a lot of 2D animated stuff that looked really cool. And I thought, oh, that actually looks nice. And then they showed 3D concept renders of the actual game that didn't look as good as the 2D stuff. And I guess the 2D stuff was like concept art or something. And then he said, you haven't played anything like this before. It'll be a game that like the emotions you feel will like change the way the game plays, and it'll be this emotional response you'll have to this video game that'll be unlike any video game ever played before. And then my last note on this was, man, the more this guy talks, the more he seems like a very abrasive David Cage. Then their video game is coming 2021. They did not show a trailer for It Takes Two. They showed some concept art in a 3D render of one of the environments from It Takes Two, but not any of the video game. So this is the tone of this show so far, is 20 minutes in, they talked about their first new video game, but they didn't actually show it yet. Then they have had Zoink Games. They are the developers of indie hits Stick It to the Man and F-E. I'm not sure how actually you're supposed to pronounce that. Then they showed a bunch of concept art for their new game called Lost in Random, which is a game about a girl and her dice friend named Dicey. Then they say we're still a long ways away from launch of this game. And then they did actually show a trailer and had a claymation aesthetic that looked kind of nice. It was like a 3D action platformer, Lost in Random. Then they brought in Final Strike Games, which is a studio that has not yet put out a video game. And so they are putting out their first game, which is a game called Rocket Arena, that basically looks like if you did Overwatch, but every character had a rocket launcher. The guy presenting it just said the words like multiplayer game over and over again. And it was this very like, we just really want to make multiplayer games. Like we are so inspired by great multiplayer action. And he said multiplayer over and over again. I was like, who the fuck are these developers? And I went to their website, and on their website, the top of the website is just a black screen. And in the middle of the screen, it just says in white text, we make multiplayer. So that developer really knows what they're about, I guess. They showed a trailer for this game.
Well, Sean, there are no multiplayer games. Like, that's the thing.
Yes.
It's never been happened before. There's nowhere to play them now.
Yeah, it's not like it is the most competitive market in modern video games that there are dozens of big multiplayer-only games that come out literally every single week that die on the vine immediately. Also, because the one thing you need for a multiplayer game to succeed is a large enough audience for people to find games in your multiplayer game. How many fucking multiplayer games on Steam came out, got some buzz the first week they were out because they were kind of okay, and then now nobody can play them anymore because nobody's fucking playing them? Welcome to Rocket Arena, your 3v3 Overwatch Hero Rocket game, coming out July 14th. Cross-play support from the start. They talked about their first season of content, and they're going to release their Blast Pass, which is something I assume will be like a $20 thing you'll get. It's your battle pass thing for this game, which I love when multiplayer games that, again, haven't even proven themselves enough to be able to get any audience because they're not even out, already announced their ongoing service-based pay model with their fucking battle pass, which is just gross to me that you do it that way. And then the thing I thought was the most hilarious is they talked a lot about crossplay support. Again, this is an indie game. It looks fine, but it's not like a graphically intense game. And that game, no talking about whether or not it was going to be on the Switch. Good job.
Yay.
So this is, I think we're now 30 to 35 minutes into the event. And then now they talked about Star Wars Squadrons. So Star Wars Squadrons leaked like a couple of weeks ago. And in response to the leaks, EA dropped a short cinematic trailer on like the Monday before this event happened. And so that's like the context. So we already knew that Star Wars Squadrons was a thing before this event. That's what it was. The game is launching October 2nd. It is a five-man squad, single player and multiplayer space combat game made by EA Motive. Something I found out after the stream that kind of surprised me is that the game is only going to be $40, which they did not pitch it like it was going to be a more budget title. And it looks nice. It's just hard to get a sense of like what the scope of the game is. And hearing that it's only $40 kind of hurts my confidence in it a bit because it just feels like...
Because does it have single player and multiplayer?
It does have single player and multiplayer. And the single player stuff, it had some cutscenes in it, and it seemed cool, I guess. Like, it's set after Return of the Jedi. You play as both the, like, Rebels and the Imperial Remnant. And it seems like the single player stuff switches sides a couple of times. And obviously multiplayer, I assume you'll just be on whatever side you're on when you load into the match. And so it will have single player stuff, but again, it being only $40 makes me suspect that single player stuff is probably going to be thin. Because they've talked mostly about the multiplayer. They talked about like they have a big mode that is a battlefield type mode where there's like a bunch of phases you move through and you win by destroying a big capital ship. And it looked cool, and it's interesting to me that like a big publisher like EA is pushing a space like dogfighting game. Which is just like a genre that has not been in vogue since like the early 2000s, where PC used to have a bunch of games like this. And you get a couple of games like this on PC every now and then, but this big push that's also going to be on like consoles, this is not coming to the Switch. Another, like, them early on saying, we're really dedicated to the Switch, and then not showing any video games coming to the Switch is funny. So it's like, it's cool in theory to me, but...
Yeah. I hope it's good. I would love for something like this to be good because I think dogfight gameplay tends to be the weak part of other Star Wars games.
Yes.
Like Battlefront 2, I played a bunch of that recently, and everything in that game is great except when you're in a cockpit. It's unplayable.
I don't like the space combat in that either. Space combat in the... Wait, are you talking about the original Battlefront 2 or the new one?
Original.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about the new one, but...
Neither, it's not good in either.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was talking about the new one, and I realized, oh wait, you're talking about the original one.
Yeah, I'm talking about the good Battlefront 2, where I'm saying everything else is amazing, but those parts are, like, lacking. I would like for... This is a game I will wait for reviews on, but I am cautiously, like, I could play this if it's good.
Yeah, I'm interested in the pitch. There was one quick shot in the trailer that did show Hera was one of the main characters of Star Wars Rebels, and I'm such a fucking mark for Star Wars bullshit. I'm like, oh my god, Hera's going to be in the game. And then I was like, but that says nothing about if the game's going to be good, but the Hera's going to be in it, and that's cool.
Well, there you go.
Yes. So Star Wars Squadrons.
The one piece of news to come out of this event.
The one piece of news. Then they had Lamar Jackson from the Ravens was on the stream, and he introduced the EA Sports segment in like a vertical video selfie taken from his phone. And this was where I'm like, oh god, please, oh no. I forgot this is EA, and they're going to do EA Sports. And mercifully, they didn't have anything substantial to say about any of their sports games. They just had like a quick edited video package. I was mostly like filling out some of my notes from earlier while I was playing, so I didn't pay that much attention to it. But there was no like, here's Pele to talk about FIFA for 30 minutes. They didn't do any of that, which is on the one hand, thank you, because I don't play any of those games. On the other hand, that's also like half of your output, EA, and it feels it helps make the whole event feel hilariously thin when you don't even talk about FIFA and Madden and the other games they make. So that was that. Then they had, this is so good that they did this again. I got such hard flashbacks from EA's 2014 E3 press conference where they had nothing to show. Because Laura Meal, who is their chief studios officer, was on screen, and she was saying, thank you, everybody. Your voices are heard, and we are reacting to your feedback. And then she started talking about new console technology coming out. I'm like, oh, right, maybe EA will show something new for next-gen consoles. And then they proceeded to show a series of clips of tech demos that Criterion is working on. So if you remember the 2014 E3 press conference, they showed a tech demo of like Criterion people being who are the old Burnout studio, but everybody who worked on Burnout is not at that studio anymore. They left and went to other places. But it was people from Criterion saying, and we're making this thing is going to have like, you're going to be like a helicopter and a boat and waterfalls is going to be crazy. And they showed like weird, no textured models and stuff like that. It's like, this is what we're working on. That video game never surfaced. We never saw anything from it again, let alone it coming out. So they did basically the same thing, and they showed some really nice looking car models on like a white static background. It's like, this is what Criterion is working on. Like, those are just two nice looking car models. This is not a video game. If the only thing you have to show for this video game is two car models and no environmental art even, okay, EA, sure, if you want to show that, this video game that will probably never come out, and if it does, hello 2024, really excited for video games coming out in 4 to 5 years, which is like the mean development time for a AAA studio these days. So the Criterion showed that. Then they showed some environments from what I assume is Dragon Age 4, because she said the word BioWare in front of them. It was just some like 3D environments in a video game. No characters, no gameplay systems, no dialogue, no story pitch. Just here are some 3D renders of an environment that look good. They're 3D renders of environment. And then they said that DICE is working on a new Battlefield game. They didn't show anything of it. They just said they're working on a new Battlefield game, which, like,
who could have guessed?
Yeah, I could have fucking told you that. I just want to know what the title of it is, because that's the thing that's most exciting. Is it Battlefield 2? Is it Battlefield 6? Who knows? And then they said that EA Motive is also going to be working on a new video game, and they showed another tech demo of like a character model jumping around a like textureless 3D city that is made out of like white untextured blocks. So again, great. EA Motive is also, in pre-production on another project. That's the studio that's also putting out Star Wars Squadrons. That whatever they're working on now is not going to be out until 4 or 5 years from now. So thanks for showing that, EA. And then I just, in my notes, said this is very EA 2014, where they showed a bunch of tech demos because they didn't have any video games. The Criterion game from that tech demo, or from that event, never materialized. And it was just like, I can't believe that EA did it again. I can't believe they've done it twice now. I've never seen any other video game publisher, developer, anything, ever show video games off like that. And the EA has done it now twice, and it's fucking amazing. That's not even the piece de resistance, because there was one more thing at this event, Jonathan. They went back to the lady Laura Meal, who introduced all the tech demos, and then she said, and we've got one more thing. And they cut to, I didn't get their names down, but they're guys who worked on the skate games, which are very popular skating video games that EA made in the 360 generation. And they said, and then in my notes I said, they're making a Skate. Is this Skate 4? ? And then I wrote down some quotes. It is really early. We've got a long way to go, but we're stoked. And it was two guys on a video call talking about, we are making a Skate game. They never said the word Skate 4. They never specified what the game was, the scope of the game, and it gave the impression that they were literally announcing that they had gotten the green light to make a new Skate game. Not that they are actually in the process of making it, that they had just been notified. It felt like fucking Mr. EA called them 2 days ago and said, okay, we'll make another Skate. Because if people who don't know, it is a big meme about Skate 4, that people really want Skate 4. And EA's social media accounts have been bombarded for like 10 years at this point, ever since Skate 3 came out.
Skate 3 came out in May 2010.
Yes, and people have been like bombarding their accounts saying like Skate 4, Skate 4, Skate 4. There is a hilarious segment on the Giant Bombcast from 2014. This is how old this meme is. Of them reading out a bunch of these comments that I recommend people look at. Even if you've never seen Giant Bomb content, look up Skate 4 Giant Bomb on YouTube, and it's a hilarious video. But yeah, so this has been something that people have been wanting for a long time. One of the guys on the stream said the most terrifying sentence I've ever heard anyone say, which is, you commented this into existence, which is not something I want to hear somebody ever say.
That's something Trump could also say at his rally.
Exactly, yes. You commented this into existence. This is the reality we live in because of bad internet comments. And so they're making some kind of new Skate game. Is it a mobile game? Is it actually a Skate 4? Is it going to be a full price $60 AAA game? Is it going to be like a budget $20 game? I don't know. I don't think they know. And that is how they closed it out. The most limp way possible. So getting everybody excited, thinking, oh, they're making a new Skate, and then never even saying the word Skate 4. They couldn't even commit to calling it Skate 4. And then my last note for this conference was, and it's over. It's hilarious how EA is the most confident at putting together a presentation, because all the transitions and the framing and the pacing of it, incredible. Like all that stuff, the hosting of it, really, really well done. Better than any of these other shows we've seen in the past month or two. So it doesn't feel like their presentation was particularly compromised by COVID. This felt like something that basically they would have shown at E3, and yet they had nothing to show. E3 2020 didn't happen, but EA is still EA. Thank you, EA. This is the last thing I wrote.
Well, there you go.
It was so funny, Jonathan. I just had the biggest grin on my face for like the whole thing, because I have never watched 50 minutes of a video game live stream and seen almost no video games before. It is the most EA thing that EA has ever done. The smallest percentage of new video game content ever imaginable in an event like this. If you haven't watched it, I recommend it because it's a great time for all the wrong reasons. EA Play. Thank you, EA.
All right. Well, Sean, thank you for so diligently taking notes on a truly worthless press conference.
Oh, it is the most worthless press conference, Jonathan.
Yeah. Anywho, that's it for today. We have another show coming for you on Wednesday. Remember, that's going to be our weekly Suit Gundam 1-year anniversary celebration podcast. So if you're a Gundam fan, please listen to that. And next week on the main show, barring something crazy happening, we will be doing our in-depth review of The Last of Us Part 2.
Yep.
If you need more Last of Us content in the meantime, remember we have 2 separate reviews of the original game. We have our 2013 OG review, and we have, I think, the even better version from 2018 where we went back and played it for the 5th anniversary, and that's one of my favorite game reviews we've done.
Yeah, definitely.
So definitely go listen to those if you need some Last of Us content, if you are a new listener and haven't heard us talk about that game, because that game came out a long time ago. There you go. We did that 5th year anniversary one thinking 2 was coming soon, and it didn't, because now it's 7 years. But we'll be talking about that next week. Yay.
And, the Final Fantasy VII journey will continue also, which I'm very excited by. The hint of things maybe to come, I did a lot of research the other day on how to emulate the PSP on my PC.